On the night of December 2nd, 1984, the residents of Bhopal, India, were turning in for the night. At the time, Bhopal was a rapidly expanding hub. Its population was surging as new economic opportunities drew workers and families from across the region. By midnight, the streets had quieted down. Hundreds of thousands of people were fast asleep, entirely unaware of any impending danger. But this quiet residential sprawl masked a fatal geographical choice. A major industrial pesticide plant was operating directly adjacent to these densely packed neighborhoods. That plant belonged to Union Carbide. As you can see, ordinary life carried on right in the shadow of the facility's looming structural towers. Inside those towers, the factory stored thousands of gallons of a chemical called methyl isocyanate, commonly known as MIC. MIC is highly reactive. If it escapes its liquid state and becomes airborne, it aggressively attacks the soft tissues of the eyes and the human respiratory system. Housing such a volatile compound with virtually no geographical buffer zone meant that even a minor failure could push the danger straight into the surrounding homes. Shortly after midnight, a stream of water accidentally entered one of the MIC storage tanks, triggering a massive runaway chemical reaction. This diagram shows what happened next. The temperature inside the containment unit began to climb uncontrollably. That extreme heat generated a massive buildup of internal gas pressure. Within minutes, the safety valves designed to hold that pressure back began to give way. When the containment finally breached, tons of toxic MIC vapor burst from the pipes, forming a dense, heavy cloud. Caught by the wind, this vapor slowly rolled past the factory gates and descended directly into the sleeping neighborhoods. A localized engineering failure had escalated. The ruptured tank was now blanketing the surrounding environment with a lethal airborne poison. Residents woke up gasping. Their eyes burned intensely, and every breath brought searing pain to their lungs. Panic set in immediately. People realized they were suffocating in their own beds, but in the dark, they couldn't see what was attacking them. Thousands abandoned their homes and fled blindly into the streets. Families sought any escape route, with masses converging on the local railway station to wait for trains that wouldn't arrive. Parents carried their children through the stampede, often collapsing as their lungs filled with fluid, entirely unsure which direction offered safety. Because MIC gas is heavier than air, it settled close to the ground. Those fleeing on foot absorbed the highest concentrations of the poison. There was no public siren or emergency evacuation plan. The streets themselves became a trap, leaving the population defenseless against the advancing cloud. Within minutes, the citizens who managed to survive the streets overwhelmed Bhopal's local hospitals. The wards quickly ran out of beds. Victims, struggling to breathe, ended up lying wherever they could find space, spilling out into the hallways and across the floors. The medical staff faced a critical disadvantage. Factory officials did not disclose the specific nature of the toxic gas. Standard treatments for smoke inhalation did nothing to counteract MIC exposure. Basic medical supplies, particularly oxygen, ran out entirely as the casualty count climbed by the minute. An absolute lack of vital chemical data compounded the crisis, leaving dedicated doctors largely powerless to save those dying in their arms. By the morning of December 3rd, the gas had dissipated into the atmosphere. What it left behind was a silent city and a staggering death toll. The poison had been indiscriminate. Thousands of human bodies lay in the streets, alongside the carcasses of local livestock, pets, and wild birds. Emergency operations shifted entirely. Rescue efforts ended, and the grim task of collecting and identifying the dead began in mass graves and cremation pyres. The sunrise exposed the full scale of the devastation. This was an industrial collapse that resulted in one of the deadliest mass casualty events in modern history. Investigations into the Union Carbide facility soon revealed a pattern of deferred maintenance. Critical refrigeration systems were turned off, and prior safety warnings had gone ignored to cut costs. For the surviving families, the aftermath brought decades of complex legal battles. Bureaucratic red tape stalled relief efforts, And the financial compensation eventually provided barely covered basic medical expenses. The physical damage extended far beyond that single night. Today, survivors and their children still suffer from high rates of chronic respiratory illness, devastating vision loss, and severe birth defects. Meanwhile, the Union Carbide plant itself was simply abandoned. Overgrown vegetation continues to swallow the rusted structures. These toxic, abandoned tanks still stand precisely where they failed in 1984, untouched by major cleanup efforts. The Bhopal gas tragedy remains an active, untreated wound. It stands as a permanent reminder that prioritizing corporate savings over strict industrial safety carries an irreversible human cost.